So good morning. Welcome to today's webinar on mobility performance measures. So the purpose of the Mobility Performance Measures program training is to provide guidance on mobility performance measures to state and MPO stakeholders by educating and communicating the outcomes and activities of the MPM program. The primary focus of training will be on these items. What is mobility? We will look at the 4 dimensions of mobility, the importance of performance measures and how they can be applied at the local and regional level, and looking at the source books, which are the major source of information and the support that you can receive from the central office. To begin with, all participants are muted. However, you will be able to ask questions via the question tab at any time, and the question and answer sessions will happen during the presentation, although most of your questions will be held until after all of the presenters have delivered their information. For those people who would like a copy of the presentation, we've shown the links up on the screen right now, and you can get a copy of the PDF, which is 6 slides per page, and we've also put up a link directly to the PowerPoint. So you're welcome to type those URLs in right now and get a copy of the presentations for you to look at while we're actually doing the presentation. At the end of the webinar, we will be sending these out as a link to all of the people who have signed up. Our presenters today are Doug McLeod, Tyrone, Scorsone, and myself, Frank Broen of Teach America. I will be the moderator. I did assist Doug McLeod and Tyrone by creating the slides for today's webinar. You can download the PDF from the URL shown on the screen. Doug McLeod is the program manager for FDOT's mobility performance measures. As you will see in this webinar, Florida is leading the nation in developing performance measures that describe mobility for Florida's transportation systems. Tyrone Scorsone represents the consultant team led by Cambridge Systematics. Doug will begin by putting performance measures in context.
Providing mobility for people and goods is transportation's most essential function. It is what we're about in transportation, movement of people and goods. Given that importance, doesn't it make sense to have mobility performance measures? There are 4 dimensions of mobility: quality, quantity, accessibility, and utilization. The quantity side deals with how many people are being moved, how many vehicles, how many bicyclists are on the roadway, etc., and tonnage maybe as well on the freight side. On the quality side, how good or bad is the service being provided? These are the traditional measures we kind of think of in terms of things like level of service, travel time delay, travel time reliability. There's also the accessibility aspect. How well can people engage in their activities? Is there an opportunity for a pedestrian to walk along a roadway? Is transit service provided? Are the buses going to where people would like to go? Can truckers get to the ports relatively easily? And then there's the capacity or utilization side. How much of the system is used up? Volume to capacity ratios, load factors for transit. And when you think about these 4 dimensions, they're applicable to all modes. So traditionally we think of the auto mode, but I'm just looking at the pedestrians down there on their lower left. How many pedestrians are walking along the sidewalk? Is the sidewalk wide enough, far enough away from the roadway? What's the quality? Do they have an opportunity to walk on the sidewalk, the accessibility, and is there enough room on the sidewalk? Similarly on transit, how many people are using the transit mode? How good is the service, the quality service provided? How many buses or other transit modes are available to the users. Can they get to where travelers get to where they want to go? And what are the load factors for the transit mode? In Florida, we work with two types of mobility performance measures. We've got a broader term, so it's essentially any metric composed of a number and a unit of measure. And there are two main types, those that are used for goals and objectives. So these are the ones that we may want to improve travel time reliability. So that would be one of those types of performance measures. There are others that are more like indicators. These are just trends that occur or something that's occurring that we may or may not use for goals and objectives. When we track the number of airline passengers, it's indicating what's happening, but we may or may not use that as a goal or an objective. Why do we measure performance? Well, first of all, just to measure and evaluate what matters. If mobility matters, then we should be measuring it. But ultimately, what we want to do is to use these measures to make better decisions. So we want to work with this technical information to provide better policy choices, and we want to try to reach our goals. Kind of the new kid on the block is the MAP 21 reporting requirements. We're interested in meeting those requirements as well. Fortunately, in Florida, we've got a positive attitude about these mobility and performance measures from top to bottom within the agency. Secretary Prasad is out front, encouraging the department to get on top of this, be positive about it. This is something the department and the state should want to do to address these mobility measures. And we've got the support throughout management on this program. Mobility may be transportation's primary or essential function, but there are many other performance measures. There's the safety aspect, safety, economic competitiveness, environmental performance measures, asset management, and then within the agency itself, human resources and agency performance. So there are many performance measures, but what we're talking about is just mobility today. Here's just an example of the safety goal area that the department is working with the performance measures of fatalities and serious injuries, with the goal of reducing those. So again, this is just one example of one of the other areas that we use performance measures in. How does the department use these performance measures? Again, well, to assess how well the transportation system is operating, to provide the department with better information to support decisions. And again, to me, those are the two key that I'll emphasize here. And then to assess how well our products and services are being delivered, and also to meet the desires of the general public, the customers, and provide accountability to the public as a whole. Moving on to MAP 21, at the national level, there are 7 national goal areas. And of these 7, the middle 3 there are the ones dealing with mobility. So 3 of the 7 deal directly with mobility: congestion reduction, system reliability, and freight movement. The states and MPOs will be required to have performance plans. In these plans, we're to show how we're achieving our desired performance, and also to link transportation investments to our performance targets. The federal government, Federal Highway primarily, will be assessing our performance plans, and these are the ways that they will be assessing us. Are we making progress towards achieving our targets? Are the targets appropriate? Are we making appropriate investments? And are we informing the public and getting their input? The Department of Transportation for Florida will be required to analyze mobility performance measures for the state as a whole. But this would also require us to do it at each county level for each metropolitan level. So currently the department's intent is to supply each of our MPOs with the analyses to meet MAP 21 mobility performance requirements. Since we need to do the analysis at a metropolitan area, we would provide that information to the MPOs if they desire to use them. These are the performance measures the department has recommended as far as meeting MAP 21 requirements. The first two are quantity related, vehicle miles traveled, combination truck miles traveled. The next three are quality related, percent of travel meeting level service criteria, travel time, reliability, and delay. And the last one is the utilization measure of percent miles severely congested. The department has been tracking these performance measures for quite some time. This is just an illustration of the system-wide reporting for the years 2008 through 2011. And these were the people-related measures. We've also done the same for freight measures. And again, this is just an example that we've been providing throughout the state for quite some time. At this time, I'll turn it over to Tyrone, who will talk about Transportation Statistics Sourcebook and other items.
Thank you, Doug, and good morning to all of the attendees. I will be going over Florida DOT's two source books, modal coordination efforts, as well as some popular definitions that we use in mobility performance reporting. The primary source for highway data and transportation analyses are the multimodal mobility performance measures and general interest source books. Both are published every August. The general interest source book contains demographic information as well as highway mileage for cities and counties. It is anticipated that MPOs as well as district offices will refer to and use these source books for their own reporting. All source book performance measures accounting for the movement of people, freight, multiple modes, and for all four dimensions of mobility are concisely contained within this one-page mobility matrix. This is not just a report on the automobile mode. We work with the modal offices, transit, aviation, seaport, and rail to determine which measures they deem most appropriate to report on a statewide basis. As Doug said, mobility is pertinent to all modes. Some examples are accessibility is an important measure for transit because system operators and riders need to gauge how accessible transit services are. Quality is important to aviation because airport operators and passengers need to know the likelihood of arriving on time. Similarly, utilization is important to the automobile mode because transportation agencies need to know how much capacity is used. And quantity is important to seaports because ports need to know how much tonnage is being moved. Modal offices may have many more measures than what we routinely report on a statewide basis in the source book. The measures are provided by facility type, and when appropriate, most measures are reported for the state highway system, the strategic intermodal system, or SIS, SIS highway connectors, freeways, and non-freeways. The measures are also reported by area type for the state, 7 largest counties, other urbanized areas, and non-urbanized areas. The measures are presented in Microsoft Excel tables and graphs for the peak hour, peak period, daily, and yearly. Doug and I will spend some time this morning clarifying some of the definitions commonly used in performance reporting. Florida DOT has categorized 3 levels of congestion severity, and the department further differentiates between 2 types of congestion. The first level of congestion is represented by conditions in which traffic demand is sufficient to cause the level of service to be at or below Florida DOT's LOS standards. Florida DOT's level of service standards are D in urbanized areas and C everywhere else. These standards correspond with the minimally accepted travel conditions in urbanized and non-urbanized areas. Here are some Florida examples of the application of the standards. The standard is LOS-D in St. Petersburg, and a more stringent standard of LOS-C in Perry, Florida. At times, the level of service gets unfairly criticized as a nebulous measure. The actual level of service letter grades represent speed ranges. A traveler in a big city experiences congestion when traveling at 14 miles per hour on a Class 2 roadway and experiences severe congestion when traveling at 10 miles per hour. Arterial roadways are further classified based on their posted speed limit. Each arterial class has different speed thresholds for their level of service letter grades. Class 1 facilities are higher speed and typically have less signal density. Traveler expectations differ based on where they are. Travelers in non-urbanized areas typically expect less traffic and therefore higher prevailing speeds. Using these congestion speed thresholds, we see that travelers in non-urbanized areas experience heavy congestion at 64 miles per hour. A similar travel speed in an urbanized area would not be an indicator of congested conditions. Here is further clarification on congestion definitions. Congestion occurs when traffic conditions are at Florida DOT's level of service thresholds. This would be the equivalent of traveling 69 miles per hour on a rural freeway. Heavy congestion exists when traffic conditions are below Florida DOT's LOS thresholds. An example is traveling at an average speed of 18 miles per hour on a high-speed suburban arterial. And severe congestion exists in oversaturated conditions when volume exceeds capacity or in level of service F conditions. There are two types of congestion, recurring and non-recurring. Recurring congestion can be measured by traditional mobility measures like delay. Non-recurring congestion due to weather, special events, or incidents is best measured with a travel time reliability metric.
I'll be talking about two important definitions, delay and travel time reliability.
Okay. We can get a couple of polls already.
There are two main aspects or questions, or where do we start quantifying delay? Is it any additional travel time experienced by a traveler, or does it become at some lower level? So the graphic on the lower left, if the red would be considered delay. If it's anything below the posted speed limit or free flow speed in an arterial, when you think about it, an arterial may be posted 40 miles an hour, it has some signals, but this free flow speed would be anything below that free flow speed. So if you hit a signal at all, that would be considered delay. But then another way to do this is to pick some norm. What's a more reasonable number than just that free flow? What's in the Highway Capacity Manual is that first definition or first meaning where it's anything below the free flow speed. Many of you are familiar with Texas A&M's urban mobility reports, and what the folks over at Texas A&M do, they work with something called an uncongested speed. So the general concept would be, again, on this arterial, if you travel at 3 o'clock in the morning on a 40-mile-an-hour arterial, occasionally you will hit a light and you will have some delay. So they consider that. So it's an uncongested speed where there's hardly any traffic, but you do hit an occasional signal. The department's recommending a threshold speed based on some reasonable thresholds, and I'll be talking about that further. Another one that has been proposed is to work off of DOT's level of service standards, so that we only count delay as something below what Tyrone has presented. And as you look at that graphic, you can see the red, and it makes a big difference of where we start counting delay. In my opinion, we've been, as a whole, the United States and even the Texas A&M folks are over-reporting delay. People do not expect to be traveling at the speed of an arterial at 3 o'clock in the morning. The department's again recommending a threshold speed. And what that threshold speed is one level of service better than DOT's level of service standards. So again, for instance, in rural areas where the level of service standard is C, we wouldn't start counting delay until it was at a level service B. So this is where we're defining where delay begins and quantifying its adverse impacts. There is no right or correct definition of delay. It's a matter of interpretation and where we begin reporting it. Perhaps even more complicated than delay is travel time reliability. I think many of you could, in your own mind, think about what travel time reliability means to you. Maybe unfortunately, this is a graphic that's being used nationwide, and there are many ways of reporting travel time reliability or different ways people think about it. So, we'll have to get to some reasonable conclusion or definition that we're going to be using in the state and nationwide. Let me suggest there are two major types of reliability definitions. One is relating to percent of trips that succeed or not. This is the traditional meaning of reliability. The widget works 95% of the time or it doesn't. In the aviation industry, the airplane departs within 15 minutes of the scheduled departure time. Percent of trips that succeed. However, it's on the highway side, or the predominant term for travel time reliability is more related to the variability in travel times. How much does it vary from one time to the next, from one day to the next hour, from 1 hour to another hour? Now, both of these types of definitions work off the same information. It's just how we view what travel time reliability means or how we're going to report it. Within Florida, our primary definition is relating to this on-time arrival. Is the trip made in a successful amount of time or not? In general, we work with the posted speed limit. This would be for freeways or limited access facilities. In general, it would be a reliable trip if you can go at the speed limit, or people could go above the speed limit. With that said, I believe we're moving more towards, at least in our large urbanized areas, a 45-mile-an-hour criterion during peak hours. Is it really reasonable to go the posted speed limit in Miami-Dade County during peak hours? And so the leaning now is probably moved to a 45-mile-an-hour criterion. And then what we're trying, so that was travel time reliability. There's also travel time variability, and we're kind of using that term to describe this other aspect of travel time reliability. This is a actually it's real data of a heavily congested facility, and what it's showing probably is a free flow time somewhere in the neighborhood of about 5 minutes. The mode, or the most common time period, it looks like it's about 9.5 minutes, and then it extends all the way out to like 20 minutes out here. So this shows the variability of travel time on a facility. the way to express this travel time variability has been primarily through a travel time index. And the suggestion here is that in general these relate to the free flow travel time and the travel time that is actually experienced. So on that smooth curve, we have a free flow travel time of this much. Frequently, the 50th percentile travel time is used, and frequently that's just been called the travel time index. I believe we have some folks from Washington State online, and they work with the 80th percentile. And probably the most recognized one is this 95th percentile, which is also called the planning time index. So again, there would be the travel time index at the median travel time index, TTI 50. The planning time index is the travel time index at the 95th percentile travel time. And I need to mention one other one. This was a popular one, though it's lost some credibility, is this buffer time index. And it's the difference between the mean travel time and the 95th. It's still a good measure, but it's not the best measure to work with for setting goals and objectives. So we want to do one more poll here, and this is an example. And you should be able to just do this in your heads. What is the travel time or the planning time index in this example? What we have is a free flow time of 10 minutes and a 95th percentile time of 30 minutes.
All right, so we're getting ready to launch the poll. So you will not be able to actually see this graphic when we launch the poll. So what is the travel time index? And if you will please select one of these options. Excellent. We're getting the results in, and in a few more seconds we will close the poll. All right, I think we're getting a good indication here, so we're now going to close the poll, and you will actually see that the travel time index is shown as 3, which is the correct answer for this particular question. And now we're going to go back to the, oh, sorry, there's the answers to your question. The travel time index is 3, and we'll go back to the presentation now.
So it was 30 minutes divided by 10 minutes, so the travel time index, planning time index, was 3. If we had been working with the 80th percentile, it would have been 25 minutes divided by 10 minutes, or 2.5. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Tyrone, who will talk about freight performance measures.
Looks like the attendees did a whole lot better on the travel time reliability answer than they did on the levels of congestion. And so for those out there, that may be an area for follow-up in the future. I'm going to talk some now about our freight performance measures, future projects, and mobility performance measures program outreach efforts. Separate measures were identified as important freight metrics. These measures were selected in coordination with Florida DOT's modal offices. We'll touch on a few of these measures. The complete allotment of them can be found, again, in FDOT's Multimodal Mobility Performance Measures sourcebook. Combination truck tonnage. This measure represents the total tonnage transported by combination trucks. I want to emphasize combination trucks here. We use the FHWA definition, which is Class 8 heavy vehicles and higher. That is because when accounting for freight movements, we want to exclude those heavy vehicles that do not typically transport commerce, like buses and RVs. Combination truck backhaul tonnage. This measure is produced by assessing the amount of empty trucks on Florida's roads. The figure represents available highway cargo capacity and is appealing to shippers who may utilize Florida's ports into the future. Most seaport measures primarily account for quantity. The 20-foot equivalent units, also known as TEUs, reported here, are accounted for at each individual seaport. The numbers are then aggregated annually for statewide reporting on TEU activity at all of Florida's ports. Aviation highway adequacy evaluates how easy it is to access our airports. This measures the quality of mobility from the airport to the nearest freeway, and more importantly, vice versa. How easy is it to get to the airport from the nearest freeway? Active rail access. This measure accounts for the percent of intermodal logistics centers and seaports with an active freight rail line. As data becomes readily available and methodologies are developed, the Mobility Performance Measures section will report on new performance measures for the different dimensions and modes of travel. Future performance measures will include bottlenecks, percent of population within 30 minutes of employment as a measure of accessibility, a separate truck level of service, and travel time reliability on our arterial roadways. As many of you know, the field of data and performance measurement is ever expanding at this time. Florida DOT plans to implement new research and unveil new tools like trip monitoring and performance reporting, and incorporating travel time reliability analysis into planning tools. A mobility monitoring management system that brings data from multiple sources, including private vendor data, into one place for access by FDOT. This system will have the ability to run individual queries and execute performance reporting on multiple scales. And freight fluidity, that is tracking freight movements through multiple modes and beginning identifying solutions to freight bottlenecks. These new projects will increase Florida's performance monitoring and reporting capabilities. Updates on the Mobility Performance Measure products, as well as summaries of existing efforts, can be found on the MPM program website. A new website is in the making that will host a lot more information, including one-page summaries of performance measurement projects. Additional information on new products can also be found here. A computer-based training is being developed with content similar to that presented here today, and it too will reside on the Mobility Performance Measures website. In the coming year, the project team plans to visit the Florida DOT districts and MPOs to provide direct, hands-on training. For more information on the Mobility Performance Measures program, or for follow-up on any of the topics covered today, please contact one of the individuals listed here. Dana Knox is the project manager over most of the material covered today. I will now turn the webinar over to Frank for questions and answers.
All right. We've got some good questions here. If you'll go back to slide 23, which roads were chosen for the mobility performance measures shown in these tables?
Is this the right?
Yes.
Okay. These vehicle miles traveled, I believe, would be for the state highway system. Generally acceptable operating conditions for the state highway system. Delay for the state highway system. Travel time reliability for the freeways. Only the freeways in the state. The miles severely congested would be for the state highway system as well. Now, in the actual report, we break these numbers down, for instance, by freeways versus arterials, the strategic intermodal system versus the state highway system. So there are many more breakdowns. This is really just an example of what was being presented.
All right. And if we go to slide 13, there was a question, can you please differentiate between the performance measures and measures of effectiveness? I've always used measures of effectiveness to gauge how something may work. while a performance measure can be the same metric but is measuring how a system actually works. Is this a correct interpretation? If you can clarify that, Doug?
Frank, I would need to see the question again. I'm okay with, on the left-hand side, we see what we're saying is a performance measure. It's just a metric with a number and a measure. Measures of effectiveness, as I remember the question, I'm comfortable with that term. So that's an appropriate use of the term, yes.
All right. Let's see. While we look for the next question, I do want to open another quick poll here, and we'd like to get some information from you, which is, who do you work for? Are you with the FDOT, an MPO, or a consultant? So we're going to give you a moment to bring that information up. All right, very good. And we're going to close the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, when we share the results here, we see that half of you are consultants and about the other 25% are MPOs and FDOT. So very good cross-section there. Thank you for that information. Let's see, we've got another question here from Lily. Within the highway capacity community, we use the term measures of effectiveness for the performance measures used to define LOS as a clarification for that. So question from Kim Sampson, are more expanded speed threshold tables related to LOS available? And Tyrone will answer that one.
Hi, Kim. Currently, density still serves as the threshold on our freeways and on our multi-lane highways, and we still have that same old service measure of percent time spent following on our two-lane highways. So unfortunately, we don't make the speed thresholds for level of service available for those two facility types, only because the actual service measures are not speed related. However, we do have speed thresholds for level of service letter grades for all of our arterial facilities that we do make available. And Kim, you and I can coordinate later if you desire on some speed thresholds for those other facility types, freeways and multi-lane highways.
All right. Another question. This one will be for you, Doug, from Karen Mandrala. The examples are all vehicle related. Are there any bicycle and pedestrian performance measures? And do you look at them together when there are multi-modes on a system?
The delay and travel time reliability primarily relate to the auto and freight modes. There are two main performance measures the department is working with or reporting on an annual basis right now. One of those is the percent of, let me say, sidewalks along state highways. So we're monitoring it to see how it, and what the goal is to increase it over time. We also have a similar one for the bicycle facilities. Essentially, is there adequate opportunities for a bicyclist to have some space or to drive at a reasonable quality of service? So we're reporting the percent of miles of the arterial system and the state highway system in urban areas that meet those desires of having more amenities for those travelers. The other performance measure that we have that we're reporting statewide is bicycle and pedestrian level of service, and we're the only ones, I believe, in the nation reporting this. So not only is there an opportunity for a pedestrian or a bicyclist to use facilities, what is the quality of service, what is the level of service for each of those? So indeed, we do have bicycle and pedestrian performance measures that we're reporting and analyzing statewide and using for future improvements in mobility.
So follow-up to that question is the bike ped and transit measures will need to be refined over time, but what you have is a good starting point. Just get ready for challenges from all of us consultants. We do have another question on travel time reliability. Is it constant travel time or more of a bell curve analysis with the 98th, 95th, and 90th percentile variation?
My experience is these curves look different for so many different facilities. There's no clean-cut bell-shaped curve or other shaped curve. The one that I showed was, I believe it was actually from I-75 in Atlanta, where it backs up significantly. You know, when travel times are that low, that's extremely bad. The Palmetto, to me, down in Miami-Dade would be the nearest thing we have to that. Now, that one kind of was a nice curve, but most of the facilities will be heavily weighted towards the free flow speed. It's not a bell, I don't consider a bell-shaped curve. There are relationships between the 95th percentile, the 80th, and the 50th, but again, it's more related to the facility than a general curve.
Following up, Kim Sampson asks, how are you going to relate 95th percentile travel time to the commercial HERE data when we're not receiving raw data points?
I believe we will be receiving raw data points from HERE, so we won't be dealing with aggregated data, and we will be able to then pick out of that data the different percentiles.
It might be worth noting right now that the department is reporting on a calibrated reliability model. So over the next year, we'll be actually moving toward measured data, whether it's the provided by FHWA or other means. So there will be a significant transition here.
Okay, completely different topic. Are more expanded speed threshold tables related to LOS available?
Those familiar with Florida DOT's generalized service volume tables, on the back of the generalized service volume tables are accompanying speed thresholds for each one of those level of service letter grades. Again, I'll reemphasize only for arterials. The speed thresholds that we presented today for the non-arterial facilities are based on a conversion using a BPR curve. And so we use them internally, but I would say they are unofficial.
All right, let's see. We've put up the links again for the PowerPoint for you to receive. We're looking back through any questions that haven't been asked yet. Oh, let's see, and a couple from, all right. So doesn't congested, heavy, and severe kind of equate to undercapacity, near capacity, and overcapacity?
Yes, they are closely related. What I'd suggest is that these VC ratios, volume to capacity ratios, are the capacity utilization measures. And what we're primarily talking about in congestion is more a little bit the quality. How bad is it? And frequently VC ratios don't, well, they match up frequently, but frequently they don't. Tyrone mentioned a two-lane roadway. Essentially, if I remember right, level service, and actually I don't remember, level service D may be at about 25% of capacity, somewhere down in that range, because it's hard to pass, and so there's a broad range of heavy congestion versus overcapacity. Similarly, at traffic signals, we frequently operate at near capacity, 90+% of capacity. That's how traffic engineers operate the system, is you want to be near capacity. So VC ratios there, again, don't match up well compared to how much delay is occurring at an intersection. So sometimes the over, under, at capacity works well, other times it doesn't. And in the other modes, it doesn't work very well at all. And again, maybe on the bike ped side, the relationship between capacity and quality of service just isn't there.
All right, and we're going to build one quick more poll. So any other thoughts that you have while we put this together?
Just to clarify, there were some questions I think about the behind-the-scenes methodology that goes into establishing some of these thresholds, some of the speed conversions, and I just came to mind while I'm sitting here that we do have a document that we can release that shows the computations and the methods that we use for all of the source book measures, and so that may be helpful for some out there who want to see the different speed thresholds for level of service on facilities that don't use speed as a service measure, as well as background on how we computed any other measure of interest.
All right. And what we'd like to do is ask you which topics you would be most interested in for more training. So we've put 4 topics up here: MAP 21 requirements, freight measures, travel time reliability, and delay techniques. And if you can think of anything else that's not on here, you can just post that in the chat pod, and we will certainly consider any of the options that you've got there. So we're leaving that on. All right. So we'll go ahead and close this poll and share the results. So half of you are interested in the MAP 21 requirements, 13% on freight measures, 27% on travel time reliability, and 13% on delay techniques. So we will certainly take a look at that in putting together our future training opportunities. Again, the links, we will be sending you these links to the PDF and the PowerPoint. If there are no more questions, then we will go ahead and close the web.